Okay, welcome again to edfgc5809. In this second video, I'm going to unpack the second assessment task. And to start off with, you can see that that assessment task is actually divided into three different components, which are due on different days and dates. The first one is due the 25th of April, and the second one, again, is actually split up into various components, which I will explain shortly. What it is that to begin with, you are going to develop a group presentation in a multimodal format. Groups meaning 2 to 3 students, and then you will be responding using the blog tool, excuse me, on Moodle to continue the discussion. You can see there what learning outcomes in respect to knowledge and skills and application that this particular task with its components relate to. So, assessment 2, what does it involve? Well, as I said, first one is the presentation, and then you got, as part of B, a series of blog postings that are due on different dates. Now, please be very careful in noting these dates, because one of the assessment criteria in the blogs is the fact that you blog regularly, i.e. each week. And obviously, because you also need to respond, people need to put up their blog excuse me, beforehand, so that there is something there for your peers to respond to, which is why they split into you having to post your thoughts as part of this conversation on the Thursday, 28th of April, 5th of May and 12th of May. And each week you also need to respond to your peers, or at least one of the peers, and you do that by the Sunday. So for those weeks, you will be blogging quite regularly, which means that they're not particularly long responses, but you do need to be very frequent because it's a discussion online. So the first thing then that you do, well, in groups of between 2 to 3 students, you're going to create and present a fairly short, about 10 to 15 minute multimodal text using media of your choice. For example, you could use dramatizations that are recorded as a little movie. You could do a photo story. You could do a poster presentation and record that. You can make a movie. You could use all sorts of different software. There's a cartoon software as well with graphics, webtoons I think they're called. So there are all sorts of different software you can use. You can be quite creative and have fun as you think of this, but obviously the content matters as well. And what you need to do is to present an interesting aspect, or at least what you think is interesting, that is covered in this particular course. So as you plan this reflection, you might think, okay, well, for example, it might be an aspect in respect to the EITSL standards that you find particularly interesting. You will think, how does this inform you in respect to developing a teaching philosophy and an identity as a teacher? What does this mean for teaching and the students? And how does this fit into the wider picture? So I've split this rubric up just for the purposes of the presentation here. So in your presentation, you're going to first off start by introducing the topic that you've chosen, explain how it relates to your, and this is the plural your because you're going to be 2 or 3, teaching philosophy and the national standards, i.e. the EITSL standards. So at a past level, you're providing a basic explanation of the context and the EITSL standards. For a credit, you will do so in a more convincing fashion. At a distinction level, you're really providing an excellent response with some thoughtful consideration of what this topic that you've selected raises. And at a high distinction, you're really very perceptive in that respect. So that's a brief, and as you can see, that's only 10 marks, whereas the next one, which is a more juicy component, if you like, is worth 30 marks. And you're going to critically explore this particular topic in relation to what researchers have said and policy initiatives, etc. You will articulate your personal beliefs, so you will really interpret this, and that's where the critical exploration fits in. You will articulate what this means and the values that are inherent in relation to this topic, and also how that applies to your role as a teacher and all those professional obligations. And you're doing this in the format of a multimodal text. It may well be that you're also articulating questions raised by this that challenge people's thinking. So you're going to, at a past level, address the topic, explain what it is at a reasonable length, so it's not too short or not too long either. You're providing a basic understanding of what the issues are, and you relate it to teachers' practice. You're showing that you've engaged with some relevant texts to inform this. Could be subject readings that have been for the relevant weeks. It could also be things that you've sourced. If you're using any snippets of text on your slides, obviously you need to mark them as quotes. Otherwise, usually it's much better to just paraphrase. And any references to anything you're referring to obviously needs to be included as well. At a credit, on top of that, you also demonstrate a really sound understanding of this particular issue that is being investigated in this critical exploration, and you relate them between experience and practice, to experience and practice. You do show some clear evidence of independent selection of sources that has informed you in gaining an understanding of this. And you're showing some good interpretation there, that you are actually critical and you're making judgments and interpreting what this actually means, rather than just describing what other people say. Distinction, more of the same, but more convincing. And at a high distinction, you're really quite original in your approach. You're also going to provide an example, quite a specific example of how this issue will actually influence your planning for learning. So based on what you've uncovered in the previous section where you explore the issue critically, you kind of come up with a so what does this actually mean? And again, there's some depth to this because 15 marks are allocated to this particular criteria. So you're articulating obvious implications for planning and classroom practice, but you might not be so detailed at a past level. You're more detailed and more precise at a credit level. At a distinction, you really are quite precise and very good level of detail and insight. Whereas at a high distinction, you're very perceptive. So again, it's an indication of higher order thinking skills. Because this is a multimodal text, you're also getting some marks allocated for the technical quality of your multimodal presentation. So at a pass level, you're using appropriate software, you're probably using a range of graphics and sound, voiceover, might be background music, probably some sort of spoken recording to it. And it works technically, as in there's no problem with the software. It shows, it works in essence. At a credit, you're probably using more sophisticated graphics, or the connection between the different slides in your presentation are more cohesive, and smooth, logical, if you like. You're using a range of design elements. At a distinction level, you're more innovative and really using some excellent quality source. It's evident that you've taken quite some time in deciding on how you're going to present this. Having said that, it's only worth 5 marks. And again, high distinction at high level. The second component of this assessment is you responding to the presentations, and you respond in the form of blog postings as well as responses to peers. So you're really having a conversation, not just a monologue where you're talking by yourself, but a conversation with the people in the course online. So you are going to make at least 3 critical and reflective postings, fairly short, about 150 to 300 words, about the topics raised in the multimedia presentations. Not your own, but your peers' presentations. And these postings need to be posted each week, so you're actually having a conversation. First off, you put your thoughts on the issues that it raised and your reflection. It probably is likely to relate to your own experiences in relation to the topic that your peers have presented. Questions, thoughts, all those things that the presentation, triggered in you. And then you're having a conversation about this. So once you've put your posting up, one of your peers in this course will respond to your posting. So everyone actually needs to have a conversation. And I usually encourage people to respond to the person straight above you or below you on the blog tool. So just have a look. You're not that many people in this course. So if someone hasn't had any response to their posting, make sure you put a posting into that response so everyone actually has a conversation. And you're going to do this on a weekly basis. So then the second week, in week 8, based on your initial thoughts and someone's response, you're then continuing that conversation. What else? So that's why the blogs that you post are important, that you actually really try to challenge each other's thinking in a respectful way, posing questions, maybe suggesting other literature or other ways of seeing it, so that you're really contributing and building a conversation. Relating it to things like policy documents might be things that you've seen in the press that relate as well. So for this component, the first one in that sort of orange colour is your postings, that you're putting up 3 critical and reflective blog postings during these 3 weeks. For a pass, you need to make sure you do it each week in weeks 7, 8 and 9. I think it was, wasn't it? Just checking something. Yes, 7, 8 and 9. So you cannot leave all those and then try to post them at the end, because you will fail in that criteria. To have a conversation, you need to contribute on a regular basis. So for a pass, I want to see that you've got your postings and that there's some connection to the presentations, but certainly they need to be regular. For a credit, you're showing some good ability there to articulate the topic and issues, possibly research that spring to thoughts and your own observations, etc. For a distinction, you articulate it, and you definitely do connect then with readings, if you like, that might further people's thinking in respect to the response. And again, at a high distinction, more insightful. So you're putting those blog thoughts, your original posting, on the Thursday, and then by the Sunday you need to have responded to what people put up by the Thursday. So in those peer responses, and please note that they're equal marks for this. So it's not just you putting something up, it's also you really contributing and building this conversation. In your response at a pass level, there is a connection to your emerging teacher ability and identity, because there's clear evidence here that you are actually collaborating with your peers by responding to their thoughts. So you're having that conversation. At a credit level, and again, they should be regular, I should point out, you need to do this on a weekly basis, your responses as well. At a credit level, you're showing a general sense of professional identity and that collaborative practice in respect to really having this conversation going with your peers. You're probably furthering, did you see that there was an article in a newsletter or something like that, to keep on building that conversation. And for distinction, you're really starting to use some evidence-based referencing and academic research to build and challenge and extend your peers' thinking. So that second sentence, responses seek to extend, challenge peers' thinking. And that is really what I'm looking at. That's the key sentence at a higher level. And certainly the same, but even more insightful and really some astute use of evidence that really does contribute to this online learning community that the blogs contribute to. Again, please submit your responses through Moodle, and do bear those blog dates in mind in respect to the responses. That's one of the key things I'm looking for, that you're regular in contributing during those weeks. Thank you.